In this video, someone has given me the keys to a Nissan Skyline. But don't worry, it's a very HubNut one. So this is a 1986 Nissan Skyline Estate, or wagon should you prefer. The Nissan Skyline was into its 7th generation, or sorry, the Skyline was into its 7th generation. I need to clarify that because the Skylines began life as a Prince, and then Nissan took over Prince, and yeah, they carried on the Skyline tradition. Although, as you can see, not all Skylines are sporty. This one is a GXE 3 litre, but just to confirm, actual Nissan Skyline. Now, you won't see many of these in the UK. They were never sold in the UK. I know of 2, I think, the nicest of which is owned by my friend Rich Newton. Hello Rich, if you're watching. Back to the 80s, very, very appropriate. So as you can see, this Skyline is a big square rigged wagon. It's also a Skyline that was sold, assembled here in Australia. They also assembled them in South Africa. In fact, a few Skylines of this R31 type have managed to sneak into various videos of mine. I was at Japan Classic Sunday back in July 2019 with my friends Ivan and Patrick, and they have a South African assembled one of these, a saloon, but still with the 3 litre engine, I believe. I mean, as you can see, the styling is very, very Nissan, but the development of these cars was quite interesting because for a time, certainly, Nissan kept on using the Prince engineers, and they worked on the Cherry and the Skylines, so the cars that were more interesting in a sort of a dynamic sense than the more humdrum models. It's a very confusing model range because above the Bluebird, of which this looks a great deal like one from certain angles, you'd got the Laurel and the Cedric and the Skyline. But like I say, these were the more advanced. I don't know how advanced the Estates are by comparison. Let's have a peek underneath and see what we've got going on here. Good old beam axle at the rear on this one, very well located by the look of it. See radius arms, anti-roll bar, and what was like a panhard rod as well, because Skylines were designed to be a slightly sportier take on the everyday car. So like I say, the first Prince Skyline was in 1957, and the Hakosuka was well into development when Nissan took over Prince, and that became the first Halo. The Hakosuka gave us the first GTR homologation special, so that's what really got people excited about Skylines. And again, that's a car we didn't get in the UK, so a lot of the history is unknown to us. These cars were very popular in the countries where you had vast open spaces, he says, looking at Sydney, which isn't vast, or well, it is quite vast, but there's not much in the way of open spaces, but nonetheless it is what it is. And I like the fact we seem to have a side light element there, I think, headlamp, main beam and fog light, or maybe that's an additional driving light, I don't know, but yeah, got 4 lamps going on there, indicators that tie in with other family members of the Nissan family. A snake that seems to have been wrapped around the grille, and concealed wipers peeking underneath. So I guess we better have a look inside. So taking a look inside, you have to give the door a good yank, but we've got all of the blue going on. Now, I thought this was a high spec model, but we've still got winding windows going on and all the blue in the world. But you'll notice we've got little telescopic height control on the seat, and if we jump aboard properly, we've got a dashboard that looks like, frankly, it was styled by the people who made stereo systems in Japan in the 1980s. Very oh, is that a timer switch, or have I just broken that? Maybe it'll pop back out again at some point, we'll see. But yeah, buttons for the electric aerial, rear wiper, rear wash. Over here we've got the hazards. You can alter your illumination, tailgate lock and unlock, controlled here. Electric mirrors, so that's slightly fancy. Over here we've got air conditioning. Again, these sliders look very similar to stereos of the 1980s. Oh, I might have that on feet as well. More modern head unit has been fitted, but we've got an automatic transmission, which I don't even know if it's a 3 or a 4-speed. I wasn't even listening while I was driving around on it to get here. We've got power shift. I don't know what power shift is really. Maybe it gives more power. I also just noticed we've got little lights, curbside illumination on the doors. But very comfortable seats in cloth trim, lovely map reading lights up here. Even the sun visors seem quite pleasant. Oh gosh, that lid looks like it's straight out of a Nissan Bluebird. But a very comfortable driving position, if rather plasticky. Quite a few of the dials sadly aren't working. The speedometer seems to be behaving, the rev counter less so, but it's an automatic, so does that even matter? And I'll turn the ignition on for some warning light action. He says, oh yes, they're over here, where we've got the rake and the arc rake lights, and oil pressure and some such. Indicator light is very dimly up the top there, and the main beam light is down the bottom, even more dim. But we'll just take in the stalks because I really like the column stalks. This was a feature also seen in the Laurel and early Bluebirds, whereas if you alter the let's get that a bit further back, see if it'll actually focus. Might be a good thing to focus on. Yeah, you can see how variable your intermittent is. It sort of scrolls. And something I must test, I'm going to put the lights on and open the door. Oh no, it doesn't work. I would have expected the tiny little bell, but not to worry, apparently that doesn't work. I'll try not to cry too much. Down here, big brake pedal, which tells you it's the brake pedal, just in case, somewhere to rest your foot. So it's a very comfortable car for covering distance. Bonnet release is down here. I should say there is no mist function. There is a pull to wash and down for your various speeds. So that could be a little better perhaps, but perhaps we'll indulge in some wipery goodness. Got the ignition on, and there we go. The wipers are struggling a bit and sort of funk down. I think they should actually come up and wipe and stay up. That element seems to be slightly broken. Yes, but there we go. That's the front wipers tested in a sufficient manner. Shall we see if the rear wants to play? Oh yeah. Oh, look at that. That's a big old wiper, and I fully approve of that. Excellent. Right, I shall stop playing with things and we'll check out what the rear legroom is like. So here in the rear, yeah, there's enough legroom. I can get my feet very comfortably, knees alert, under the seat in front. I've got a nice pocket for storage here. I'm just resting my shins very slightly on the back of that seat, so it's not the most generous legroom, but it's a nice comfortable seat. I've got my own winding window. Oh, and it only goes down that far. Disappointed, but you can see it's tinted glass, so that's all good. No rear head restraints here, and a 50-50 split rear seat. I don't know if there was ever a load cover. I can't really see any mountings for one, and I don't think the seat base tumbles. I can't feel any hinges, so maybe it's just that the back folds down. Let's move my bag out of the way. Oh, there we go. A little release down there, and there we go. Yeah, so that's just, it's not an out and out practical wagon. The load floor seems quite high. I imagine the spare wheel is stored underneath, but oh, back we go. Let's go and have a look at that. So we must unlock the tailgate first of all, and up she goes. And there we go, a fair sized load space, if not dramatically so. Kind of backing up these sporty origins. Oh yes, there we go. We have a full size spare wheel under the boot floor. So that's pretty decent, and little cubbies variously. Oh yes, electric aerial. We should test the electric aerial. That looks like it shouldn't have come off quite like that, but nonetheless it did. Access for bulbs, I would imagine, and a little cubby for the jack and some ratchet straps. Very nice. Right, I'll just turn that on, see if we can get the aerial. Oh yeah, there we go. Beautiful. So under the bonnet we find the legendary RB series 6-cylinder engine that were introduced with the R31 Skyline. New family. These engines in double cam form would obviously power the GTR models to much motorsport success with turbos and all sorts. This is an RB30E, so it's got fuel injection and is 3 litre, but because there's no D in that title, it's only got a single camshaft. The full-blown GTRs use the the RB26 for a 2.6 litre DETT, so double cam, electronic fuel injection, twin turbos, and a lot of people are prone to cramming big turbo lumps in these, but I think that's enough really. 159 brake horsepower. It's the same engine they also fitted to the Holdens over here, the VL Commodores, but with a better radiator layout. I think the radiator was actually lower than the engine in the VL Commodore because of its slopey nose, which caused all manner of issues. Yeah, not bad power output, and there's confirmation of the Australian build. I think we rather should go for a drive. Right, I'm going to try something a bit different on this test and try and use my new head cam mount, so we'll see how ridiculous I look as we take this Skyline for a drive. Start the engine and get the aircon going again, because that works. So only 153,000 kilometers, that's not ever so many, but a very smooth engine in this single cam form with no silly exhaust. Fair bit of fan noise. It's a viscous fan, so when I started the car earlier it was nice and quiet, but because the engine's got up to a certain temperature, the fan is now quite loud, so it spins more quickly as the engine warms. But I think the engine's too hot for it to, so most of what you hear is fan noise, but it might quieten down once we're underway. Handbrake is off, blind spots are checked, pedestrians are lined up ready to run over, and we're away. Oh, and this time I do have no speedometer working. Oh well, it was working earlier, honest. So a bit of a noise from the suspension. The suspension perhaps sounds a little tired, but otherwise it's a really nice, easy car to drive. The steering wheel feels very slender after you've driven a few modern cars, but it's a lovely, comfortable driving position. I can definitely see what the appeal of these cars is, and I love the blue interior. I think that is a very fine thing indeed. But one thing, you know, I've had a bit of a drive around in this car already, and one thing that really strikes me is it does feel a lot more modern than the Laurel they were selling at the same time as this. I've driven Laurels of a similar vintage, and they feel a little antiquated. The gearbox makes much older noises, and generally the way the cars drive, they feel a lot more antiquated than this. This feels much more modern, a bit sharper. I think the handling is better, and that's probably because it was developed by those Prince engineers. And this is what Nissan did. It had some cars that were very, very traditional, well into the 70s, and I think even into the early 80s. The Sunny was rear-wheel drive and very conventional, and the Cherry, developed by those Prince engineers, was a bit more cutting edge. So Nissan always hedged its bets slightly. I've no idea where we're going. We shall find out momentarily. Trying to reduce my head movement so I don't make the ride too much for you, but very smooth transmission. It's very syrupy, and I drove here in a 2016 Ford Mondeo today, and that cannot match this car for gear shift smoothness, so that's progress for you, I guess. But yeah, if I turn the fans down again, I mean, it's very, very peaceful really. I can hear a few trim creaks, and I think that's only because there's so little of a noise going on. Ford Falcon Ute there, just proving that we are indeed in Australia. Oh, speedo pops up now just to tell me that I was going too quickly. That's amazing. So briefly pointed at 60, we're still in a 50 zone here. I'll head out of town and find some faster roads, because otherwise it's just going to be me driving very slowly. But I have to say, this is a very, very likeable car. It feels a lot more pleasant to drive than Nissan Bluebirds of this era. I should know, I've owned a couple, and as impressive as the engineering is and the solidity and their reliability, they're not very exciting cars to drive. And I can't say this is exciting, but it somehow feels a little more engaging. I suppose big 3-litre engines can do that to a car. Oh, you are going to signal at last, thank you. Right, I shall find some more appropriate roads that are a little more interesting. At least I hope I will. I have no idea where I'm going. Oh, we can do it to 80 now, but the speedo still isn't working. Completely unnecessary G-Wagon there. Very nice viaduct we're going over. They have a very relaxed approach to lane discipline in Australia, very much the same as New Zealand. Undertaking is perfectly allowed. A particularly strong kickdown response. I wonder if the kickdown cable's not fully functioning. Don't like to linger in a truck's blind spot. Let's get a shift on. It's certainly a lusty car. It makes lovely lusty noises. I'm kind of trusting that everyone else is obeying the speed limit, because I still have some slight issues in the speed department area. Yeah. Manually kick down. That would appear to work, but doesn't seem to want to kick down on its own. But this is lovely. I mean, I've been driving around mostly urban roads. It's a real struggle to find some fast roads. I know the owner wanted me to do a 0 to 100 in it, but I haven't found the right conditions for such endeavours yet. Tricky in a city, so I might see if I can find my way to a motorway. But maybe I'll pop into this petrol station, seeing there's absolutely no one behind me at all, and might fire up the old sat-nav and see if we can't find some better roads. Right, I think I've found our best spot for an acceleration test, but I'm just going to have to wait for traffic and we'll get this underway. I was hoping Waze was going to show me speed, but it doesn't seem to, because the speedometer isn't working. But oh, there we go. We only got up to 90, so I think it's fair to say it's not really the most powerful car I've ever driven, but what it has is torque, and frankly I don't want outright power. When it comes to Nissan Skylines, this is kind of enough. 159 brake horsepower, plenty of power, don't need more than that. But it's just a lovely lazy car, but it's not lazy in a rubbish way. Some cars are just too lazy. Because it's got the muscle of the mid-range, it pulls quite well without ever having to rev the engine particularly hard. So I can definitely approve of that in a motor vehicle. So I'm sorry we didn't get to do a full 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, but it's not the best terrain around here. We are a bit too close to Sydney. All the roads are a bit too crazy, but yeah, Lovely smooth gearbox, which I'm enjoying very much indeed. It's just silky smooth, and yeah, I like this a lot, to the point I'm now wondering if I need to try and track down a Skyline. I don't think the Estate would work for me, even though it's got a nice rear wiper. I think the Saloon would be better, but yeah, I like it a lot. I have no idea what the power shift button does. I've just turned the power shift off, and yeah, there's no kickdown going on whether I have the button in or out. So now that's the button in, stamp on it, there is just no kickdown. So I think something is a bit amiss there. I think it probably should kick down without the need for me to click it into second. Gotta be said, I really like the steering in this car. It feels very nicely geared. I mean, you don't get much in the way of feedback, so it's not like I can feel what the front tyres are doing, but nonetheless it feels connected. It feels very, very tight, and that's something that definitely sets it aside from the Laurel. Even the C32 Laurels, they do feel a bit wobbly, whereas this feels really well planted. We've got that big beefy anti-roll bar at the back. I'm sure there's a fairly beefy one at the front as well, and yeah, it's a surprising package, because you could easily drive a lot of 1980s Nissans and think they knew nothing about making a car pleasant to drive. They do very good at making a car easy to drive, but they just weren't exciting really, and my Bluebird certainly bored me to tears. It just seemed to roll a bit too much and didn't seem all that keen on going round bends. This seems much better. So there you go, that was the Nissan R31 Skyline Estate in 3-litre form. Tested, a very likeable package. Perhaps a shame they didn't try selling them in Europe, because much potential there. We'll just quickly point out, I think the Saloons did have an independent rear suspension. I think the Estate just had a beam axle because it's an Estate, and those were the days when they thought bigger and beefier was better, and I can see why that would prove hugely popular in South Africa and in Australia. They like simplicity. They were building cars with beam rear axles, saloon cars, well into the 21st century. But yeah, I like that a lot. Very joyous to drive. It's another car I'm adding to my wish list. The list grows ever longer. But I shall say thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the ride, and I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Farewell. That is slightly creepy.